Part 1. The Letter from the Past. I never believed in cursed places. For me, stories about haunted houses were just content for YouTube channels and bored tourists. That was why I agreed to go to the village of Brookhof, a place whispered about in strange rumors. Everything began with a letter. It was inside my mailbox with no stamp and no return address. The envelope was yellowed, as if it had spent decades in a damp basement. Inside, there was only a single sheet of paper with a short message written in trembling handwriting. You must return. The house still remembers. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but the address was familiar. It was my grandmother's house, the one in Brookhof, the house that had been locked since her death 10 years ago. I stared at the letter, trying to find a rational explanation. A prank, maybe, or someone trying to scare me. Yet deep inside, something felt wrong. As if my name had been called from the shadows of memory. The next morning, I boarded an old bus that traveled there only once a day. The road passed through a dense forest where sunlight barely touched the ground. The driver, a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, looked at me through the mirror. Brookhof, he asked. Yes. He frowned. No one goes there anymore. You're the first in weeks. Why? He hesitated. People disappear. The bus stopped near a rusty sign that read, Brookhof. Beyond it, there was no real road, only a dirt path leading to a cluster of crooked houses. The village looked dead. Windows were boarded up, fences collapsed, and the wind pushed old doors back and forth with a hollow creak. My grandmother's house stood at the edge of the village. It was larger than the others and, strangely, untouched, as if someone still lived there. When I reached the door, I noticed it was slightly open. I clearly remembered locking it years ago. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of dust and mold, but on the table stood a candle. Fresh, still warm. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, and a voice whispered my name. Part 2. The Whispering Walls. My heart began to pound so loudly I thought whoever was upstairs could hear it. I stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, staring at the dark staircase. Hello, I called, my voice shaking. No answer. The footsteps stopped. I slowly climbed the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The second floor was colder than the first. The hallway was narrow, and the wallpaper peeled like dead skin from the walls. At the end of the corridor stood a mirror. I remembered it from childhood. My grandmother used to cover it with a cloth every night. I had never asked her why. Now the cloth was gone. I stepped closer and looked at my reflection. At first, everything seemed normal. Then I noticed something strange. My reflection blinked, but I didn't. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The image in the mirror smiled slightly, its lips moving without sound. Leave, it mouthed. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed from inside the walls. Not from a door, from the walls themselves. One knock, then another, then many, as if dozens of fists were trapped inside the house, begging to be let out. The sound grew louder and louder. I covered my ears, but the knocking turned into whispers. They're still here. Don't look at it. It feeds on memory. I ran back downstairs, nearly falling on the last step. In the living room, I found something that hadn't been there before. A dusty photo album lay open on the table. Inside were pictures of the villagers. Men, women, children, all staring directly at the camera with empty eyes. On the last page was a photo of my grandmother, but her eyes were scratched out with something sharp. Under the photo, someone had written in red ink. She tried to seal it. My hands trembled as I turned the page. There was one final picture. It was me, standing in front of the house.
Taken from outside. The photo looked new. I heard the footsteps again. This time, they were behind me. Part 3. The Thing in the Mirror. I turned slowly, my breath trapped in my chest. No one stood behind me, yet I could feel it. A presence. Heavy and close, like someone breathing against the back of my neck. The air felt thick, as if the house itself was alive. I grabbed the photo of myself and shoved it into my backpack. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it closed. I know you're here, I whispered. What do you want from me? The answer came from the walls. Your place. The voice was not human. It sounded like many voices speaking at once, layered and broken. I backed toward the door, but it slammed shut by itself with a violent crash. Dust fell from the ceiling. The mirror upstairs began to hum, a low, vibrating sound that made my teeth ache. Images flooded my mind, flashes of memories that were not mine. A little girl crying in the hallway, a man clawing at the mirror, his fingers bleeding, my grandmother standing in front of it, holding a candle and whispering prayers. She bound it, the voice said, with glass and names. The house shook. I ran upstairs despite every instinct screaming at me to flee. The mirror glowed faintly, its surface rippling like water. Inside it, I saw faces. Dozens of them. Villagers. Their mouths opened in silent screams. They are not dead, the voice whispered. They are reflected. A crack spread across the glass. I remembered something from childhood. My grandmother warning me. Never look into the mirror after dark. The crack widened. A black hand pushed through the glass, bending it outward like thin ice. Then another. The reflection stepped out. It looked like me. Same face. Same clothes. But its eyes were hollow and dark, like empty windows. You came back, it said with my voice. Now I can leave. It smiled. Behind it, the mirror showed nothing but darkness. And I realized the truth. The house didn't want me to visit. It wanted me to replace it. Part 4. The escape. I ran. I didn't think, I just moved. Down the stairs, through the hallway, straight toward the front door. My double laughed behind me, its voice echoing like broken glass. You can't leave, it said. The house chose you. The walls began to twist and bend, as if the building were breathing. The floor felt soft under my feet, like wet soil. I reached the door and pulled with all my strength. It wouldn't open. Something grabbed my ankle. Cold fingers. I fell forward, scraping my hands on the wooden floor. The whispers returned, louder than ever. Stay. Take his place. Let us go. I kicked blindly and felt the grip loosen. I crawled to the door, found the old key still in the lock, and turned it. The door burst open. Outside, the village looked wrong. The sky was dark, even though it should have been afternoon. The houses leaned toward me like watching eyes. I ran down the dirt road, not daring to look back. Then I heard footsteps beside me. Not behind. Beside. I glanced to my left. It was my reflection, running at the same speed, matching every movement. You can't outrun yourself, it said calmly. Suddenly, memories poured into my mind. Not mine, but the village's. I saw people entering the house one by one. Each time, the mirror created a copy. Each time, the copy escaped and the real person stayed trapped inside the glass. My grandmother had been the last to stop it. She sealed the mirror with names and candles. But the seal needed blood from the family. From me. The reflection grabbed my arm. Just one step back inside, it whispered, and I will be free. I felt myself weakening, pulled toward the house as if by invisible strings. Then I remembered the candle. I pulled it from my backpack, lit it with shaking hands, and pressed it against the reflection's face. It screamed, not with a mouth, with the sound of breaking glass. The reflection shattered into shards of light and shadow. The wind howled across the village. The house groaned like an old animal in pain. For a moment, everything was silent. I stood alone on the road, breathing hard. The house behind me was dark, but the mirror was not broken. It was waiting. Part 5. The last reflection. I didn't return to the house. I walked until my legs gave out and collapsed near the edge of the forest. When I finally dared to look back, the village of Brukov was gone. Not abandoned. Gone. Only trees stood where the houses had been. The road had vanished. I thought it was over. I was wrong. That night, in my hotel room, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and tried to convince myself it had all been a nightmare. My reflection stared back at me. Normal. Breathing. Alive. I turned away to splash water on my face. When I looked again, my reflection was still staring, but I wasn't standing there. It raised its hand. I felt mine stay still. You broke the seal, it said quietly. Now there is no house to hold us. I stumbled backward, crashing into the bed. The reflection stepped out of the mirror as if the glass were liquid. Behind it, the mirror showed dozens of faces, The villagers, my grandmother, and many others I had never seen. They are free, it said. And so am I. Then what am I? I whispered. It tilted its head. You are the place. Suddenly, I understood. The house had not been destroyed. It had moved. Inside me. Now, sometimes, I hear knocking under my skin. Sometimes, I wake up with dirt on my hands. And sometimes, when I pass by a mirror, my reflection smiles. Before I do,